You know the old saying, you should trust your gut?
You really should.
Yeah, about that. How about the ones our parents always told us? Do as I say, not as I do. I really hope this isn't an instance of the do as I say, not as I do, and this all works out. Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we're working on Project Cheapskate, yet again. See, as I was doing a previous repair, the parking brake decided to lock up. Unbeknownst to me, I'm driving around and those things were smoking. So I got back to the shop, I pulled the parking brake module out of the car, see if I could find anything, and I could not. Here I am with a new parking brake module from Amazon. This wasn't the cheapest one. It also isn't an OE replacement or the like that you would normally find on FCP Euro, ECS Tuning, Turner, or any one of those websites. It's much cheaper than that. So I'm really hoping that it works out okay, but we'll find out together. Our first step, we need to make sure to get the parking brake disengaged through the emergency release cable in the trunk. We're working on a 2010 X5, which would be a pre-facelift car. If you have a facelift like 2011 and newer E70, it might be different, but this is a good starting place for you. Let's go to the back. Out back here, we're going to be popping our service cover up, and we're looking for the release tool. This does both your parking brake up top here, as well as your transmission release. Then we're going to be popping over to this driver's side cover, and down here in this corner, there's a little cable sticking up. This cable notches into the corner here, and you'll pull on it. You're going to pull straight up. If your parking brake is currently engaged, this will release it so that you can roll the vehicle. Once we have the cable released, we're going to want to get the cable out so that we can remove it down underneath. We're going to pull up our little carpet, and we're going to use a set of pliers to squeeze the teeth in on the side, and then we're just going to pop it down into the fender well. Then once we're underneath, we'll be able to pull it out and through. Now we can get the car up and see what we're dealing with. We're going to start by removing both rear wheels. Once we have the wheels off, we're going to go ahead and pull our calipers and rotors off as well. I'm going to start on the outside by popping our retainer spring off. You can lever against the rotor here, push, and it'll pop out just like that. I like to keep one hand on it so that thing doesn't fling off into the shop or into my face. Moving to the back of our caliper, we'll pop both of our dust covers off. Then using a 7mm, we're going to back these out. Now you may need to spread your caliper just a little bit. You can use the rotor to pry against it, and then give it some wiggles to get the screws to disengage, or your slide pins. And you really don't want to hang your caliper like this. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and do this because I feel okay with it. I don't have any cracks in my line, but this is not ideal by any means. You could take your rotor off and then re-hang it while we're working on it. Next, we're going to use an E18. It's one of these funny sockets. Pull our caliper bracket off. And then last piece of our puzzle, 6mm Allen again. Pop your retainer out. This is a retainer, does nothing besides retain. Doesn't have to be that tight. And then slide your rotor off. And like I said, for lack of a better location to tie up your caliper, just hang it back up. Then it was only hanging there for 30 seconds to a minute, right? You should be good. Now to prep our cables, you've got a bracket here attached to the knuckle. I'm coming in from above with an extension and a 5mm ball to get that little bracket off in order to get our cable out. It's going to be the same on both sides. That's our little retainer bracket. For this next step, we have to get the cable out of the retainer. Now up on the top of the cable, you can use a pick to lift the spring retainer off of the top, and then a secondary pick underneath, get under there first, and then get onto the top piece. On the back, you can push the cable in just a little bit, and then try prying both of them up at the same time. You see right there, now our cable has released from the latch mechanism inside, and we should be able to wiggle it out the back. Just like that. Now our cable's out. and we can move on to the two retainers at the top of the cable. If you follow the cable back to the upper control arm at the subframe, you'll see where those retainers are. They're just rubber clips. So let's go there next. I'm gonna start with a pry bar from the back side here and see if I can just push it up. And there it goes, just pops up. Now I did spray mine preemptively with a little bit of silicone slide lube. This is just silicone that I have. Let's get this driver's side. All right, now we've got both cables completely released. We need to get into the fender over here and get the emergency release out. Over here, you should be good just popping these two screws out of the corner. And if you have the front screw here, pop that one out. Then we're just gonna be peeling this back and pushing forward. You can see if you follow from the parking brake, the cable runs around and up and in, and you've got two clips here on the subframe, and then there's another clip up behind this metal shield. You can use your hand to follow it up, and you'll find it, and then you can just pop it out. There we go. And because we released it inside already, we can pop it down. Now, I'll pop it out of these two clips, and you're gonna pull your cable up and over the subframe. So you might be asking yourself, do you have to take the cables out? No, you don't. You can disengage the cables from the motor assembly. That's only if you're fortunate enough to live in an area that doesn't corrode and rust and fall apart underneath. I live in the Southwest, I'm in Arizona, and this has been an Arizona, California car. There's no rust anywhere under here, no corrosion on anything. So my cables are actually in good shape. But one thing that causes these motors to fail a lot is when the cables start jamming up because of corrosion and wear. And if you don't replace them and you just replace the motor housing, you're gonna get this fault again. So it's worthwhile to note, you probably wanna just go through the effort and replace the cables. I tried talking myself out of it because it's frankly much easier to not replace the cables, but in the long run, it'll be better for this car to have fresh cables on it. So here we are. We're gonna start by getting our cable off. There's a push tab and the lever to pull back, and that comes out. And then you can see where our cables run out both sides of the motor housing, and then where now my broken release cable is. And there are three 13mm bolts holding the bracket to the body or the subframe, and three 10mm holding the unit to the bracket. I'm gonna be taking the 10mm out of the bracket so that it's easier to maneuver this guy up in there, and then I'll take the 13s out. Pop that down. Now we gotta snake this octopus out of here, and ideally you're gonna drop in front of the sway bar on this side and down past the exhaust. If you have a V8, you may have to lower the exhaust to do this. I have the 6-cylinder, so we'll see what happens here. Now I can just bring it over and around. Maybe. These cables are stiff. Well, I've got them here on the bench to compare against each other. My passenger side cables all look about the same. Connector looks about the same. Flip it over this way. This side all looks pretty identical to each other. It's got the production dates here, but no BMW stamp or manufacturer sticker. The release cable is different, same length, but it has a finger pull, which will actually be better for most people. Everything else looks the same. Comes with a new bracket, new little rubber booties. So, let's see about getting this bad boy in. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the bracket off because being able to maneuver this box is much easier without it. Now, be careful of your emergency release and your other cables. Just try not to overflex them, I suppose. That's how I broke mine when I took it out the first time. So we're gonna go passenger side first, up and over, and we're gonna try to route it, use our belly to move everything, across the top where the old one was, so that we can get it into the same clip. Now I can see I need to go below a brake cable up here, a hard line, or a brake line, not a cable. Try not to break anything going in. That sounded crunchy. All right. Well, that's up. I'm gonna go too far, let that hang. Come over to this side, make sure that the cable's coming through the right location so that I can get it into the housing. That looks good. Now I'm going to put a gentle curve on this guy, try to get it up over to the other side. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to come underneath this hard line. If you don't go underneath the hard line, you won't be able to clip in to the retainer. Same deal with our emergency release. Route it up and around. Try to keep everything nice and gentle. Now we can slide this guy over towards the middle where it goes and put our bracket on. Actually, I probably won't put the bracket on because I want to get the cables in the housing first. All right, I'm going to get this side in first because short side right now. So I'm going to look in here. There we go. And you have to get it lined up with the groove with the rubber grommet up there in order for this to seat in place. And I think just pull down on that. Seat it in nicely. Ish. Oh, there we go. Just got to play with to get it to seat. There it is. With your lines clipped back in, install your spring retainers, remount your bracket. Now at this stage, there are two things that you don't want to forget. One, you probably won't forget this, your emergency release. Route it through your two clips, one clip up in the fender, and then pop the little retainer up into the chassis. Two, don't plug it in yet. What we want to do first, just in case the car actuates or does anything weird, is we want to adjust the shoes to the rotors. Then we'll plug it in and see what's going on in the car. Get this in first, then adjust your shoes. Adjusting the parking brake shoes to your rotor is pretty easy. You're going to need a flat blade screwdriver, and then you're going to be coming through one of the lug bolts to the adjuster, and then we're just going to adjust it. Now obviously we want to throw the rotor on there, but what I like to do is adjust it until the rotor's a little difficult to get on, just because it's easier to do while I can see it. We're going to see if we can slide the rotor on. It still goes on, so let's go ahead and tighten it some more. So what we're going to do is we'll adjust it until the rotor won't turn, and then we're going to back it off 5 to 10 clicks. We'll do that on both sides. We'll try to do it the same on both sides, and then we'll put our brakes the rest of the way back together. Having the rotor off just really helps to illustrate what it is you're doing inside there. With a long enough screwdriver like this, you can also do it with the wheel on the car through the lug bolt, and you can do it without taking the wheel off. Nice maintenance tip for you. I like to leave the mounting screw out so it's easier for me to spin without having to spin the whole driveline assembly. Okay, be honest. When you see somebody working on something online and they're just using a wrench, ratchet, or anything of the likes, you know that there should be a torque. Do you say click in your head? I know I do. We're plugged in. Now we need to make sure to get our emergency release locked back into place. Well, shall we turn the key on? See what warnings we have? It says red brake, no brake warning this time. That's a positive start. Let's pull up on the lever. Ah, I heard it actuate. Also a positive. Now let's turn it off. Nope, can't do that without putting my foot on the brake. Can't put my foot on the brake if I can't get in the car while it's on the lift. Let me get my brake actuator. All right, let's try this. Foot on the brake. And we hear it release. Ha-ha! That's a pretty fun sound. I'd say we did all right. So before I get too excited, I went ahead and I scanned for faults using Bimmerlink and my OBD-CX connector, and I've got a bunch of faults. So I have dynamic stability, parking brake, instrument cluster, and dynamic stability. I don't know why it's in two different spots, but I think these are the faults from before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clear them and see what comes back. There is a possibility that this needs to be coded. At least that's what I was reading online with other people. But so far mine is working, so I'm not sure. Okay, everything is cleared. Now we'll read memory and see what we're dealing with. And the parking brake is currently on and holding the car. Okay, we made it through. It shows no faults. So I'll do a key cycle. I'll make sure that the auto hold function works, and then I'll scan for faults again. Okay, so I'm getting a crossed out message in the dash for auto hold. And I think that's because this is gonna need to be coded. So we're gonna have to go to that step next. That's kind of funny. I have to put my safety belt on for auto hold to work. I guess that's not coding. And I don't have any faults still. So it looks like we had a successful repair. In an effort to double check everything, I've added another scan tool to my repertoire. What I'm using here is a Samsung Galaxy 9 Plus. I'm not an Android user, so I really don't know much about all of these, but I can figure things out. And then I downloaded an app called Pro Tool. Pro Tool lets you access a whole litany of things that you can't access in other apps. It's one of the closest things that I've been able to find to any BMW scanning ability. So what I decided to do was go into Pro Tool. I'm looking at functions, and then I'm going to read the VIN. The VIN in my parking brake module is Y. That's not the right VIN. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to coding. I'm going to go to factory code, and then I'm going to put the factory VIN into our parking brake module. I can hear the car thinking. So what it does is it looks for the vehicle order from the CAS or the FRM, and then it's going to apply that vehicle order to our parking brake. Okay, coding finalized, cycle your ignition. So we'll turn the ignition off and back on, and we'll go back into functions, and we'll see what the VIN says. Now the VIN shows the VIN to this vehicle, and we've successfully coded this module to the car. While I understand everything was working, this is probably going to be important for a couple of reasons, just in case there are any other ancillary controls that the car might need to know that that parking brake is back there, that it will be able to use that. Could you get away without doing this? Probably, but should you? That's up to you, really. For me, I decided to go this route by adding Pro Tool. So now I have a Foxwell scanner, I have Pro Tool, I have Bimmer Geek, Pro Tool is Bimmer Geeks, I have Bimmer Link. So I can connect via Android, I can connect via my phone. I've got a Bluetooth adapter, a wired adapter. You probably don't need to go this length. Honestly, Pro Tool is the best thing that you could go with. Me not being an Android user, I tried the Bimmer Link and Bimmer Code first because, well, I have iPhones. So when those weren't robust enough to do things like coding, it was time to upgrade. So let's talk reality of this repair. Could this have been repaired? Yes, it could have been repaired. Why didn't I repair it? I don't know how. The motor inside, I've seen people source it. On the circuit board inside, usually the cables getting corroded and the motor getting worn causes a relay to melt down. You could solder in a new relay on a circuit board. You could, I can't. I've never done anything like that. So for me, it was easiest to replace the whole unit, as I'm sure it will be for most people. I do recommend replacing the cables and everything together. Can you do it without it? Yes. The cable ends unscrew on both sides, and then on this side you have a screw gear that you have to wind out. It's reverse thread. Let's do it this way, like that. And then over on this side, there is just a little clip that you have to release. When you get the cable or the clip released, that comes off. This is the clip here. You just have to pull it back in order to get this end off. The emergency release is integral. It's not coming off. So you could do it without replacing the cables. Again, I don't recommend doing it that way because the cables are one of the reasons that these things fail. The corrosion and the buildup of any debris inside of here, or stretching or anything like that, is going to cause an over amperage of the motor and possibly cause things to melt. not what you want. So replace the whole thing. I've got the link to the one that I used in my car. So far it's working. Time will be the gatekeeper on this one. We'll see how it goes. Remember what I said? Do as I say, not as I do. You know, it's up to you. How much money do you want to spend on this repair? I am up to about $4,000 on this car now, and that sucks. But I've got a good runner, at least thus far. So thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, buy some merch, do what you can. Really appreciate you. And I'll see you in the next video.